For this assignment, we'll be learning how to create realistic values using charcoal. And with that, you will draw either a ball of clay or your kneaded eraser. So I just like to pick out a little piece, use that for an eraser, and then use the rest as a big, and sculpt that into a ball. So that's what I'll be drawing from, is that little kneaded eraser sphere that's kind of molded into a nice round sphere. And if you notice from the lesson, there are 5 parts of value that you'll be drawing in. So I'm just sketching the sphere right now, but you'll want to pay attention to the highlight, the coarse shadow, the midtones, the reflected light, and the cast shadow. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to find that in your own sphere or in your own ball of clay. So you'll probably just lightly sketch out your sphere on the piece of toned paper. And then you will use the charcoal and the chalk to add your highlights and shadows. Now this is the easy part because most likely your sphere will look just like the one online. So I've got my sphere sketched in, I've got some of the shadow differences sketched in, and those are, I've got my Tortillion chalk and my charcoal. So I like to break off a little piece to work with. And usually I start with the darkest values first. Start drawing those in. So that's my core shadow that's going through the object. Now I'm drawing the cast shadow. And I also left a little bit of room for the reflective light. And at this point I'm just using my fingers to blend everything. Charcoal especially is very easy to blend. In fact, I didn't even really need to add a whole lot of value inside the sphere because I used the values from the core shadow. Adding highlights can be tricky. You'll have to use the chalk just to add a circular area where the highlight is, and then you'll have to blend that into the midtones on the toned paper. So if you work with the values enough, and if you pay close attention to the sphere right in front of you, then you should be able to get a realistic looking object that should also have the 5 different parts of value. So as you can see, I have my highlight, I have my midtones, I have my core shadow, I have the reflected light, and I have the cast shadow. So now comes the hard part. We're going to squish our sphere of clay and make it into a weird amorphous blob that has lots of ridges and bumps so that it's a lot more difficult to draw. And then from this, we will draw the values in it. We will try and pick out the highlights, the coarse shadows, the cast shadows, the midtones, and the reflected light. But it's going to be a little bit more difficult. This will challenge you to see those values in a difficult object. So as you can see, I went from drawing a simple sphere, such as the object in the picture, to drawing a more complex object where it's harder to find those parts of value, such as the highlight or the core shadow. So as you can see, I'm starting off the exact same way. I'm just drawing a simple, really light line drawing of what I see in front of me. And I'm just trying to draw the blobs of the clay or the kneaded eraser shape in front of me. And remember, the point of this assignment is to create interesting looking values that look similar and realistic when compared to that blob. So I'm also starting off using value in the exact same way by putting some darker value in my core shadows and cast shadows first, those darkest areas first. And then from there, I'm just going to blend the values, add some highlights, and I'll always keep referring to that weird little squished blob for more information. I'm trying to get my drawing to look just like that blob that I made out of my kneaded eraser. So really, this is just an abstract way for you to hunt for values and for you to try and find those 5 different value types in an abstract way. So you're going to need to look for a highlight. You're going to need to look for a cast shadow, core shadow, reflected light, and midtones. I think if you compare your drawing enough to the actual object in front of you, then it will start to get easier as you go. So I have some of my contrasting values laid out. I've got the lights and the darks in. Now I need to start adding the midtones. So with this, you'll just add some charcoal, you'll blend it in. You'll find that you probably need to add more charcoal to the really dark value areas. You'll also probably want to blend them in either with your finger or with one of those blending stumps or tortillons. Also, don't forget to add that reflected light too. So this exercise will definitely help you notice values more, and it'll help you start utilizing core shadows and cast shadows and highlights more efficiently, as well as improving your value skills. So always keep referring to that little blob, your reference in front of you, and I think you will do just fine. By the end, your drawing should look very similar to the clay piece or eraser piece in front of you. So here's my finished drawing. Notice that both drawings have highlights, they have core shadows, cast shadows, midtones, and reflected light, and that they also look similar to the actual references that I was using.